What's going on, everybody? This is Island Hopper TV, and today we're going to talk about the things to avoid doing while visiting the Philippines that makes this place not such a fun experience. Let's talk about it. So the first thing that people make a mistake about doing is spending too much time in the big cities. Manila, Cebu City, Davao. They go to Dumaguete, they go to these big cities, and they're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? This isn't the Philippines that I saw on Instagram or YouTube or wherever they saw the videos. And that's really true. You don't want to spend too much time in the cities. You want to get out in the provinces, islands, island hopping. The cities in the Philippines are congested with traffic. You talk to all the locals, they'll tell you the exact same thing. It's not like I'm just some foreigner coming here telling you some new information. This is something the locals will tell you, that the traffic in the cities is just not that good, and it makes it really hard to get around. The cities have some stuff that is worth seeing, so I would recommend spending like 24 to 48 hours in a place like Manila or Cebu City, going to the seaside or Mactan Island in Cebu, or going to BGC maybe, or Makati, or even Intramuros in Manila. But outside of that, really don't plan to spend too much time in the cities. You want to get out into the islands. That's where the magic happens. The next thing I want to say is, don't think that Philippines is going to be like any other travel destination you've been, or especially your home country. People maybe have these expectations of Fiji or Tahiti because they see waters like this and beautiful scenery, but then when they get here, they're like, oh my gosh, it's really hard to get around. Transportation, the quality of life isn't quite what you would find in a five-star location, although they have that in Manila and maybe a couple other places, but most of it's going to be 2 to 3 star accommodations all across the island. So be ready for that. Like, for example, last night here in Siargao, I stayed on the island, and I'm paying, you know, for a pretty nice hotel, but I've got lizards, I've got bugs in there. It's not a big deal. I've got ants, but I've got 2 lizards that were sleeping in the room. You know, and even the hotel that I changed to tonight, $100 a night. You would think that a $100 a night hotel would have running water and no bugs or no problems like that, but it does. And so those are things you have to prepare yourself for. Is you're just not going to get that Sheraton, Hilton or Hyatt experience outside in the islands. And if you're ready for that, that's a good thing. But most people, they come here for that, because that's really what you're going to love about the Philippines, is that down-to-earth feeling. I'm just saying, be ready for that. People who come to the Philippines and don't prepare for that really end up kind of in a pickle right off the bat, and they're kind of like, oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? But thankfully the people are so friendly, it usually works itself out. Next thing is talking about transportation. Don't get your hopes up too much about transportation getting around being fast. I mean, I've been in congested traffic, I've also been in crammed vans. You know, you're gonna pay that price to get to paradise, whether it's a ferry boat that just kind of has diesel fuel in the air, but then you're going to a paradise, so you're like, oh my gosh, for 2 hours I gotta suck it up and go from Dumaguete to Siquijor, or go from Cebu to Panglao, or go from El Nido to Coron. Some of these things, they're really kind of challenging, especially if you're staying in an airport, like a small airport in the Philippines. The infrastructure is just not there, so getting up your hopes about the infrastructure can really be frustrating. You got to prepare. It's going to be a challenge getting around here, especially if you're in traffic. I mean, I went from BGC to Intramuros, and it took about an hour, and it's, I think, only like less than 5 kilometers. To go for 45 minutes is quite a long time. And that's the same thing going from the airport in Cebu to Cebu City, where Ayala is, for example. You're just gonna have to get used to that, but it's worth it. That's the thing. I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm just letting you know, be prepared for that, because if you're not prepared for that, you're gonna be like, oh. And something else I would like to say is, if it's something you really can't handle, don't overextend yourself with destinations in your trip. Let's talk about that more. So this thing about overextending yourself with destinations to visit, realizing that the transportation is not ideal here, can really be a hassle. Maybe if you're coming here for 3 weeks, pick 3 destinations to visit instead of trying to do 6, unless you really have that tolerance for the transportation. But I think most people don't really realize how difficult it can be sitting in a ferry terminal for an hour and a half with no air conditioner, or sitting in an airport with air conditioner that's barely working, or 2 hours or 3 hours. They say show up to your flight 2 hours before. So I mean, you could be sitting there for 2 hours in an airport that's very crowded with no air conditioning. just to go from, say, Siargao to Cebu City and then on to Boracay. Oh my gosh, that can be really a hassle, and a whole half a day is gone just because of that. So if you're booking in a 3-week itinerary, a bunch of different destinations, and you're not really someone who can stomach that kind of transportation situation, maybe just stick with 3. And those 3 that I would probably go with would probably be El Nido Coron, Northern Palawan. I don't think you really need to see Southern Palawan on your first go, even though the underground river is pretty cool. And then I would say maybe Boracay, Siargao, or Oslab in Cebu. Cebu's got a lot going on for it. If you go from the north to the south, you could probably spend the whole time there. Panglao in Bohol, doing the chocolate mountains on the Bohol Island. Those are some of the areas you can really key in on. Boracay, like I said, very busy place though. I don't know about Boracay for everyone because it is so busy. It's such a tourist destination nowadays. But those are the ones that I would say really focus on. You pick 3 of those and then just go with it on your first visit here, and then see what your tolerance is like for your later visits. Next up, let's talk about scams here, because this is something that comes up. So the people in Philippines are extremely friendly. It's easy to trust everyone because the people are so smiley and friendly, and a lot of people really are. But there are some scams that you need to be aware of, and a lot of it can come from people that cozy up to you, making you feel like they're your best friend almost right away, and then the next thing you know, you're in some sort of scam situation where you're getting taken for a ride. I'm not going to get into all the details. You can look it all up. I mean, I can make a video about that, some of the things that I've seen and heard, but you have to be careful, especially if you're a single guy coming here thinking that you're, you know, this big boss guy that all the women are going to love, because the women have been known to take men for rides with that, taking advantage of that, where they make the men feel like they're the only one, or they're the next boyfriend, and then come to find out they're married or they have a boyfriend at home, and you're really feeding 2 mouths or 3 mouths or 4 mouths that you didn't even know about. That's just one example, but it's not just that. There's scams with transportation, there's scams with tours, but I want to reiterate, the people here are extremely friendly. It's just you don't want to let your guard down thinking that every single person here has your best interest in mind, as any place, but you will hear people tell you about that. I've had local Filipinos tell me about this quite frequently. Be safe. I've had that happen. My Filipino friends telling me, in Manila in particular, walking around Makati or other parts of Manila, saying, be safe, be safe. And I'm like, why are so many people telling me to be safe? Seems like everyone's friendly. And they're like, there's a lot of scammers here. And that's coming from local Filipinos. Again, I mean, they'll tell you right when you get here, once you start making friends with people, what to look out for. And especially in Manila and Cebu and the big cities, that's where it's prevalent. The small towns and the provinces, not so prevalent to find scams, although they can happen. But I found the provinces to be much more safe. Next thing I've seen is people who fall for the beggar trap. They start pulling out money, giving to someone who's begging, and the next thing you know, a whole bunch of people just start falling around them. There's actually a law here in the Philippines that says those people are not supposed to be asking you for money. But, you know, you've got a heart, you care about people who are poor. Obviously, people who need help, you know, you're trying to help people. But at the end of the day, a lot of those people are not considered people that the Philippines government wants to have doing that. So be careful doing that, busting out big wads of money. Once they start seeing you have money, the next thing you know, they just start flocking to you left and right, and you're being pursued all across wherever you're at. I've had this happen to me a few times. Just buying one thing, you'll buy one pearl earrings, and the next thing you know, here comes another person trying to sell you pearl earrings again. You're like, I just bought pearl earrings, I'm good. And they're like, well, come on, sir, buy pearl earrings. And, you know, then they'll try to sell you more stuff in their collection. And I get it, they're just trying to work. But what happens is you become a bit harassed one by one the whole time you're on a beach, and you're just trying to enjoy it just because you bought one pair of pearl earrings or something. So if you're gonna buy something like that, try to make it discreet. Don't bust out a big wad of cash and show everyone that you got a big wad of cash, because then they'll just start coming at you left and right, trying to sell you the same thing over and over and over. Next thing I would say is don't get too comfortable with the food, thinking that you can eat anything and everything from the street or anywhere else. This should go without saying, but you know, the water still is a situation, especially in your hotels. That's why they give you those bottled waters on the side to rinse your mouth and brush your teeth with, not just to drink, but also to wash your mouth instead of drinking out of the faucet. So try to avoid any of that. Definitely don't drink any of the water out of the faucet. That should go without saying, but especially in the provinces, even in Manila and Cebu, you can't drink out of the faucet. I wouldn't even recommend trying it is going to make you sick. But also the foods, you want to make sure they're properly cooked, especially the seafood. Make sure it's not been sitting out in the sun for more than a day or something like that. That's why they typically recommend going for the fresh seafood that you can still see alive, although some people think that's cruel to the animal. Could be, but that's how you at least know that it's fresh seafood, right? So don't get too comfortable with the food here. I'm not saying avoid eating the food, but you have to also take into consideration common sense, right?
Thank you everyone for watching Island Hopper TV. If you enjoyed this one, please consider watching another one of our videos. We have a recommended video and another video for you to watch next.